Thank you. Patrick Wintour, The Guardian.
Thank you very much. Secretary of State, the Israeli Defense Minister Gallant this week warned that Israel had reached a strategic junction in its war with Hamas, where it must choose between the risk of a broader escalation and a hostage deal with Hamas. Do you agree with that assessment? And secondly, is it not really the case that these ceasefire talks are at a deadlock? And could you in any way give any assurances to Benjamin Netanyahu about the Philadelphia corridor and that there is no need for Israeli forces to be there? Israel's security will be preserved. And Foreign Secretary, you were in the UAE last week. The UAE is one of the few countries that has said it's willing to put troops into Gaza as a peacekeeping force. Would you welcome that? And would you like to see other Arab states make the same offer?
On the ceasefire, here's what I can tell you. More than 90% of the issues have been agreed, decided. So we're down to a handful of issues, not even a handful of issues, that are hard but fully resolvable in our judgment. And as we've said before, when you get down to the last 10%, the last 10 meters, those are almost by definition the hardest ground to cover. But we believe that these are fully resolvable. Right now, we're working intensely with our Egyptian and Qatari counterparts to work together to bridge any remaining gaps. And in the coming time, very soon, we'll put that before the parties, and we'll see what they say. I think what is evident, though, is the strong interest that everyone in the region has in being able to get this ceasefire concluded. It's clearly in Israel's interest. It's in its interest to get hostages home. It's in its interest to turn down the temperature in Gaza. It's in its interest to have possible off-ramps in the north with Hezbollah and Lebanon that a ceasefire in Gaza would make more possible. It's in its interest to also further enable us to calm the situation in the Red Sea with the Houthis. And it's in its interest because it opens other prospects that could fundamentally alter Israel's security for the long term, including the prospect of normalization of relations between Saudi Arabia and Israel. We saw back on April 13th, when Israel was attacked directly by Iran for the first time, something unprecedented, and that was other countries coming to its active defense. And this showed in embryonic form what the future could be, a future in which Israel is integrated into the region, in which it enjoys normal relations with other countries, something it sought from day one of its existence, in which it's protected against the aggression coming from Iran or its proxies, and in which Iran and those proxies are isolated. That's very much possible in the future. But it requires resolving Gaza, ending the conflict there. It requires, as David said, a credible pathway for the Palestinians to a state of their own. And these are very hard issues. But that future is very powerful and very positive. The alternative is a perpetuation of conflict, a perpetuation of insecurity, and multiple fronts at the same time, not only in Gaza, but we see what's happening in the West Bank and growing insecurity there. We see what's happening in the north and the possibility of conflict with Hezbollah and even broader conflict with Iran. From day one, our purpose has been not only to make sure that Israel can effectively ensure that October 7th never happens again, but also that the conflict doesn't spread. And we're intent on that. But the longer all of this goes on, the greater the risks of just that happening. So I think for Israel, clearly for the Palestinian people, and especially Palestinians in Gaza, who desperately need this conflict to be over so that they can get the help that they need and begin to rebuild their lives. For every country in the region, the interest is clear. I can't speak to what's in the mind of Mr. Sinwar and where his interests lie. He will have to make those judgments for himself. But we remain resolute in working to bring the ceasefire over the line, because it would open up so many more positive prospects. And let's see where we are in the coming days.
Could I just say, Patrick, that Tony's assessment that 90% of the deal is there is completely correct. And in the end, what you need are partners for peace. And that is now in the hands of Bibi Netanyahu and Sinwar to get us over the line and to take that deal that is on the table. And we've now been talking about that deal for weeks. It was important to go to the UAE, as it's important to speak to Arab partners across the region. And the focus of your question is on the day after. And clearly, it's on the security guarantees that are important for Israel to have. And Arab partners, and certainly the UAE, are showing some forward-leaning in their commitment to securing that. But what I think is absolutely essential, and they all say this, is that there has to be a pathway to two states. That has to be present, or they cannot give that commitment. And then there's also discussion of both the security in Gaza and the administration. And clearly we have to see a reformed and renewed Palestinian Authority, and there can be no role for Hamas going forward. So we're very focused on the day after, but let's remember that when we talk about the deal, it is a phased deal. Let us get over the line to get to that first phase, and let us see that pathway to security on both sides.